Friends, I hope you don't mind sharing with this. This is not a whole, this kind of spiritual. This is how things used to be back in the 80s, being an 80s guy. And I just miss these times. So I'll be share that with me. I'm just kind of, that's what I do sometimes. I'm just hanging out by myself and reevaluating the day and just trying to relax and get grounded, and they call it. So having fun. So there's some really good channels out there like this. But this one I just came across. I was like, I want to go back to breakdancing. I was like, gosh, when I was growing up, I think it was even like, it was about 7th, 8th, or 9th grade, breakdancing was just starting to come along. It was actually about 8th grade, okay? And now it's funny, one of the Mandela effects actually shows breakdancing before that, which is way back to like 1920s and 30s. A guy showed some breakdancing. That just could not have happened, right? So that's another history change that we had. We've seen tech before its time. A guy used to do YouTube channels that. So even breakdancing before its time. I'm not kidding you. It blows my mind because it showed this black and white film of them breakdancing like in 20 and 30s. It's possible though. Sometimes things are introduced and disappear in there's cycles through history. For example, like colors. We've seen colors of avocado in the 70s and yellow before that. And then you could tell, see the whole reel, and I went off this other tangent, but sorry about that. You notice that the whole reel changed in colors, that you can actually see it in the sign of times even, that we're in these times where we used to have very colorful, even in the 80s, you had a lot of purples and pinks and bright blues and neon. I mean, everything was neon. We used to be able to buy even neon windshield wipers. Kid you not, everything was like just full of color and life. It's so wonderful because, you just didn't know it was really like a real, just like blooms and blossoms of just all these colors. They really cranked it in the 80s. What a great time. So I want to thank our creator, God, and all the rest that helped make that true. Angels High Command, true, make that a part of my life, because that was so wonderful. There's great times throughout history. I mean, I would like to go through the 50s, 60s, 70s, all of them. Each one has its own unique character. But I got to be honest with you, these times right now, oh, no, thank you. You actually talk to a lot of people, even all the way from that grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 90s. It kind of went off the cliff around 2001, right? And we don't want to go there because you can get a strike if you just say one wrong word. But everything when they said the world's going to change, and it did right after the the big incident in 911. Well, anyway, it did. It's like everything fell off. Music started changing. There's rehash, songs, anything like that, right? So anyway, so I'm going to play this song because I'm not the song. This back to breakdancing. So I hope you enjoyed. If not, just move on. And so I'm sorry I wasted your time, but it's just a little nostalgia moment for me. This was really cool. It was just to say, about the colors, yeah. So now, sorry, I didn't finish where we're at with that. Sorry, I apologize, kind of all over the place. But anyway, so we went into this gray and black. See, everything was gray and black. You can see it's just moving. And I've talked about this in other YouTube videos. It's a spiritual. There's people that are in between the line of white and black, and everything is a gray rule that's kind of a dark to black, and it's either black or white. It's really crazy, isn't it? Just amazing how this world kind of has a dark feel to it. And, it's just, that's the progression. See, they control everything through news, media, music to really bring the people down. And you can see the colors. Colors been brought down. And like I said, you can't even buy a baby carriage that has a blue for a boy or pink for a girl, and just different colors even, right? Everything's been just cross-mixed and pulled down, right? So that was one of the things I noticed too. I'm like, one day I was like, man, why is there no any cars? Look around the cars you observe. Then I just look at this guy. Yeah, it's a great car, right? There's gray and black, white cars. I'm not saying they're bad. You don't have a black or gray car, but it's just like there's no color. There's no variety. Everybody's becoming a brick in a wall or a soul in the wall. Yeah, I call them soul in the walls because everybody's taking downloads, NPCs, and all these other things, right? So don't be a soul in the wall or brick in the wall. Even the Pink Floyd, so don't be a brick in the wall. All right, so we'll go ahead and play that. Sorry about it, went on a little tangent there. So 1980s Nucleus. Now I remember them. I don't remember a lot. I'm going to go play the songs because I remember Nucleus when they came along. I was like, what is this? I said, it's kind of cool. Oh, I just put my little thing. That's a picture of me. Well, there I was. That's kind of cool. I didn't know you could do that. All right. So that's me in the dark here. So that's like I said, I do sometimes on a night like this where I'm just hanging out by myself and just relaxing and stuff like that. Because it is alone in the world. Oh, I'm not kidding you. But I know the Father, Lord, the angels, and all these people are there, and they're paying attention and making sure that, I feel comfort them, that I know they're there. But it is lonely because, you can't give, your Creator a hug unless you do it in your mind, or in the Lord, hugging your mind, the angels, right? And I know people that do that. I said, I'll give somebody, one of the angels of the Lord or even God, or hug, in their head mentally. So anyway, so not to go about that, or, sorry. So here we go. I've been rambling because sometimes I do that too when I'm by myself. You get kind of tired and start to ramble. All right. Love y'all. Here we go. And I'm just going to stop at the end and just cut it off. Right. All right. Here we go. This is Nucleus. And let's see, this is from 1984. And also there's a movie called Break Dancing. I don't know if you remember it. It was kind of weird. It's unusual. It was just called Break Dancing. And I also watched Revenge of the Nerds. That was hilarious. Booger, you got to pull that one if you have a chance. I'm not trying to tell you what to watch or do. Where Booger actually talks to the master. And and that one's hilarious because he learns the master how to belch. I mean, you got to realize, it's kind of gross, disgusting, but you got to realize your God and the Lord and the rest of them do have a sense of humor. They said actually that the Lord has a great sense of humor, that wasn't recorded in scripture, right? Because they had to come out really formal and all these other things. It makes me wonder how many other, people, prophets we had, because they always had smiles in their face, and, and it's like even Buddha or other people, Gandhi. It makes you wonder how many people actually had a great sense of humor when they're trying to send messages of love, peace, and joy, right? It makes you wonder, because that's one thing that's to people's heart is through music or laughter or comedy. And from what I'm understanding, that we don't have all the information, though. Like, for example, the Lord had a great sense of humor, and I couldn't see how that couldn't be possible, because that it wouldn't be impossible, because he was very intelligent, just blow your mind intelligence. And not saying that you have to be intelligent to have comedy, but you could see it. And from my experience, working with the Lord, he does have a sense of humor, and he can brush stuff off very quickly, which surprised me. Because one time I said, man, how do you take the insults that people are just insulting you right and left? And just start, you just do, Kirk. He does. He's not a big deal. Yeah, because he'd been through so much, and he's a model of how to be, and he just brushed it off, right? Just brushes it off. Doesn't have impacts him zero. So, just no impact to him whatsoever. So you try to insult him, he just brushed it off. But it doesn't matter to me, Kirk. So, all right. So here we go. I'm going to play this, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm going to try to make sure, I don't know, I've never tried this. This way we have this horizontal and all that stuff, so I'm hoping it works out well. It might turn up to disaster. All right, God bless and love y'all. Sorry.
Jam on it. Yeah, we know. Yeah, you wanna rock, right? You gonna do it now, right? Yeah. What's it? Jam on it. Down and then give me no slack like a boogie king with the sack of Big Macs with throwing down and with the rockables hats on time. In your mind, see, you gotta bring it to your best ability. You gotta funk it up until they knock you down, and when you're funkin' up, they show you pass it around. Come on, let's go to work. We got what'll make your body jerk. Make you throw your hands up in the air, shake your booty and scream, oh yeah, 'cause we are the jam on you and jamming on it is how we do the do. We'll funk you up until you book it down. So come on, people, check out the sound. 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 Check out the sound.
to introduce myself, well, my name is Jimmy B. And I'm a surefire, full-blooded, bonafide, hot rockin' jam on production MC. If you want the best, then put me to the test, and I'm sure you'll soon agree that I got no flaws, cause I'm down by law when it comes to rockin' viciously, you see. Cause when I was a little baby boy, my mama gave me a brand new toy. 2 turntables with a mic, and I learned to rock like a Dolomite. Time went by on this God creation. I knew someday I would rock the nation, so I made up my mind just what to do. And I joined with the Jam On production crew. So go crazy, go crazy. Don't let your body be lazy. I said don't stop the body rock till your eyesight starts to get hazy. Clean out your ears and you open your eye. If you want to hear the music, just come alive. If you don't know how, get ready to learn. Cause Cosmo's taking his turn to burn.
Take a seat, and O in the C, then you add M-O, and a freaky D, add a funk and beat, and then what do you see? It's Cosmo D, yeah baby, that's me. I got the beat, that's oh so sweet. Without me rocking, it's incomplete. So rock this, yo, rock that, yo, rock on and don't you dare stop. You rock this, rock that, and that's a fact. Cause the Jam On crew will rock your body right, rock the steam locomotive right off the track, and the whole wide world of funk attack. To the beat, yo, get down. Let me rock it to the rhythm of the funky sound. From hill to hill, from Z to Z, and when Jam On's rocking, everybody screams. I jam on it, jam on and on and on it. And if you're feeling like you wanna dance on that, then go on ahead and blow it. Cause jamming on is what we do best. It's what separates us from the rest. And if you don't think our crew's down for real, let me tell you what happened to the man of steel.
Say Superman had come to town to see who he could rock. He blew away every crew he faced until he reached our block. His speakers were 3 stories high with woofers made of steel. And when we bought our set outside, he said,
Real. You said I'm faster than a speeding bullet. And when I'm on the set, I don't need no fans to cool my ass. I just use my super breath. I can fly 3 times around the world without missing a beat. I socialize with X-ray eyes and ladies. This is sweet.
and then he turned his power on and the ground began to move. And all the buildings for miles around were swaying to the groove. And just when he had pulled the crowd and swore he won the fight,
We rock this butt with a 12-inch cut called Disco Kryptonite. Well, Superman looked up at me. He said, you rock so naturally. I said, now that you've learned the deal, let me tell you why I'm so for real. I'm Cosmo D from outer space. I came to rock the human race. I do it right because I can't do it wrong. That's why the whole world is singing this song.
jam on it.
I jam on it. I say jam on it. As day turns to night and night turns to day, whatever time it is, I wanna hear you say.
Jam on it.
I jam on it. I say jam on it. Jam all around and upside down. I keep jamming to the Jam On production sound.
Jam on it.
Jam on it. I said jam on it. I said jam on is the funky beat that takes control with the short sharp beat that'll rock your soul.
Jam on it.
Jam on it. I said jam on it. Get out of your seat and jam to the beat and don't you dare stop your early morning.
Jam on it.
Jam on it. Jam on it. Jam on it. Jam on it. Jam on it. Jam on it. Yeah, like, did you see where he went in the corner and he started doing this? Wiki, 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 Who's rocking the mic, you know? Beat is fresh, y'all. Yeah, fresh.
Okay, well, talk about nostalgia. I mean, this blows. It just really, you know, it just brings so much memories back. It just blows my mind. Growing up in a small town, Montrose, I remember taking some breakdancing classes. Not a lot. I moved on to jiu-jitsu because I couldn't do this. I did several classes. You had to stay on your hands and just spin on one arm. I was like, my body just was not built. The God created did not put my body for breakdancing because I was going to break something in the breakdancing. And because I tried it and I was like, wow. I mean, I was like, so I do some basic moves and I was like, geez, this ain't me. So, but yeah, one of my buddies, Lincoln Davis, I said, let's go do this breakdancing, these classes, right? So we took about, I don't know, it was like 3 or 5. I can't even remember. I took several classes and I'm like, okay, I'm done. Because I couldn't do it. I got some of the basics, maybe about 4 or 5 moves. And there was a basic patterns. You saw there's some basic patterns to breakdancing. Of course, the moonwalk, you saw that a little bit. But anyway, so that was it. It was also interesting that I just realized, as looking back at this, we had an explosion of different types of, like, you know, it's almost graffiti art. We had mass explosions of R's and B's were really explosive and just beautiful. The people spray painting, no, not unfortunately on walls and stuff, but it's pretty interesting. And then you look at it today, what's interesting about the graffiti that people do on walls and stuff, like the song they paint on some of the walls, it was nothing like the 80s. My gosh, I mean, these people are taking spray cans, and actually sometimes they left it alone because even in Delta, Colorado, a small town down from me, that some kids had started spray painting, and they said it's so good. They said, if you can do that, we won't make you wipe it out, but if you can do some like mountain scenes or cute, cool stuff, they'd leave it, and they left it there. I'm not kidding you, they left it there. And they used to have competitions of who could paint the best. What I mean, okay, left them in the alleys because you had maybe the old brick buildings. These kids would start painting. They said, you know, if you're going to do that, you know, do something that, you know, don't say anything offensive or even gang. You didn't have like gangs, but, you know, some kind of good lettering and stuff, you know, something that's nice, like, you know, laking, you know, something. I'm trying to take an example, a good statement. Well, let's just say like love and peace or fresh. Sorry. Oh my God. Joker was talking. Sorry about that. That was a big word called fresh. I mean, everything said fresh. You know, it also had gag me with a spoon. Now, I'm sure if you guys heard that, the Valley Girls. But for the males, everything was fresh, and that was amazing. Because even Montrose is like fresh this, fresh that. And they put fresh in big F with blue and with a star with red and yellow and green, all these different colors. They paint fresh everywhere. Anyway, so that was really just, it was explosive. A great time, like I said, because you had this artwork explode. I mean, everything was blowing out the doors. You had the most ever one-hit wonders ever in the recorded music industry. You had everything from Michael Jackson to just all these artists. I didn't know how the system supported that many people because there was just, every week there was somebody else coming out. And then the movies, remember? We had Back to the Future. We had the Star Wars started a little bit. Yeah, I think Star Wars started right around in that time frame. I mean, just all these movies. I mean, just, you got to be kidding me. It was this explosion, just like the reel was hitting its climax of all these great things, art, dancing, this and that. We had Flashdance. We had all these great movies. Just, I was like, whoa. I mean, we had video games exploded that came out. Remember, you know, they had video stuff before, but we're talking video games, Mario Brothers. All these things were exploding just around the world. I mean, just boom. It's kind of like this big climax. And then like I said, every climax in a movie, then there's a drop off, right? And so anyway, so in the 80s is kind of like the number infinity. Think about that. 80s generation, 80 infinity, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if there's anything there, but there is things by generation because, see, it makes sense. You had the baby boomers. They kind of boomed it up. You know, they came up, boomed out, and the baby boomers, no offense to them. I'm not trying to insult that generations. But you had the baby boomers, right? And I'm a Generation Xer. See, like the end of times, you get it? Generation. There's the next generation. Because I'm Kirk James. They call me Captain Kirk. So you had Generation X. It was kind of like this, the maximum climate of everything. Not kidding you. So you had the Generation X, and then they had the Y and whatever. But now you have the millenniums, right? They call them millenniums. Millenniums, they said the millennium with the Lord. See, it's even in the way they called the generations. And you remember, and then in Lord in Scripture said that this generation mean the future. Some say that that they didn't say that, but he did. He kind of lead us in. This would be this generation will be in the future. He said this won't pass, it'll be a generation of the future. And that generation will be the beginning of the millennium of the Lord. Whoa! And now they call them millenniums, right? What's the odds of that? Well, that's a message, right? So we have millennium with the Lord even, right? See, it's all, you have the millennials, right? And everybody's complaining about the millennials, but, they actually tend to be more spiritual than anybody our generation, because we weren't that. But I know Mandela Effect increased the spirituality as well, though, because woke people up. They said, oh, this whole place is a spiritual world. But I'm telling you, it's kind of there, right? Star Trek, The Next Generation, keep saying about that. There's a lot of things about XX. X is like, stop, start, new, right? So anyway, it was even the Western Visions and Nerds. They called it was actually called the what's it? The Omegas. Yeah, Mega. Well, Omega Lambda, but the Megas, right? So there's a lot of stuff about the Alpha Mega, this, that, and things like this, right? So anyway, not to go on about that. Wow, there's so much to say. I know I don't want to wear you out. There's so much to say about the 80s. I mean, wow, what a time. It almost brings tears to my heart to where we are today, and the children have to grow up in this society with masks. So I'd be careful, with facial stuff. Everything's been just like Matt from Quantum Conscious talks about. It's just, how the world's changed. They can't even make good movies anymore. People would say, without even saying they didn't watch Matt Channel, they said, my gosh, they said the crack that's coming out of Hollywood is just garbage. You can't remix everything, and it's disgusting. And it's sad about it. There's a ton of artists that have great ideas, new things, but everything's being pulled back, right? And everything, it's all been held back. Heck, I could write better movies, and I'm trying to boast, so you probably could too, better stories, that than they're producing out of Hollywood. It's sad. I've heard music way better, but the music stinks. It's horrible. You gotta kid me. Even this new rap music, it is nothing like the 80s rap. I'm serious. The rap was way better. I'm not a big into rap, by the way, but there is some good stuff there, right? And this new stuff is garbage. There's the trance music, and that's why I don't understand. I'll be listening to people listening to music, this new junk, and I'm like, God, how do you find entertainment? There's not a good rhythm, not a good beat, not a good instrumentals. I'm like, what is going on? It's kind of like everybody's been dumbed down so hard that it's almost become tribal, just back to the days and just basic beating. I'm not talking about Native American, boy. They can play flutes, they've all had, and I'm talking just about this really modern, tribal, stinky music, right? Just horrible. I don't like it. It's just like, God. Everybody, you can hear like the ones that are a little bit older generations like myself, the ones even older than me, the 60 and 70-year-olds, they're like, 60, 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds, they're like, God, this music's just nasty. It's not, and sometimes you always have that generation gap in music, but it's nothing like this. You can't adopt this stuff in your head, in my opinion. I don't know how they do it. My daughter even sent me some music that she had, and I'm like, what? I said, that's disgusting, Chris. That's horrible stuff. But she likes it sometimes, so you're kidding me. So there's kind of a spiritual thing behind, music and all this too as well, that we know, right? Anyway. I think that's about enough babble about the 80s. I thought there's some more cool stuff about, break dancing. Notice the moves, though. Look at our society. You don't see that even kind of dancing today. You don't see that fast moving, just spinning and twisting. And really, you had the 50s where they did a lot of, let's do the twist and things like that. You had a really good dancing that was introduced in the 50s. And then you had the 60s, 70s, kind of had Solid Gold. You had John Travolta and some of those things. But then again, guess what happens in the 80s? John Travolta, I think, with disco dancing was big, which is big, by the way. Disco was, I shouldn't forget that. I think it was late 60s, 70s disco, and that was big because, disco dancing. I was never fond of disco dancing. And then you had the break dancing of the 80s. And that was just a whole new introduction. Blew the doors off, right? You had Michael Jackson do the moonwalk, which he didn't originate. He took it, because even Flashdance, I think, had dancing before him. That's the first time I saw actually break dancing or moonwalk, and then and with break dance, had a little bit of break dancing, very brief shot at it then, and then you had break dancing, this movie that was huge at the time. By the way, I don't know what the numbers are. I'd like to be curious because it was the only movie that was really about dancing and that crazy about breakdancing. And it wasn't really well written though, by the way. You notice that? I mean, the dancing was good, but it didn't grab the essence of that era that was happening. It's too bad somebody didn't write a real true breakdancing that just snagged the whole essence of that whole breakdancing, because it's exploding around the nation, classes everywhere, people's there trying to breakdance. And that's one thing I want to bring up to you real quick, is that was interesting because they advertised breakdancing that reduced crime rate, even like New York City, Chicago stuff. I wonder if that was true or not, because that's what I'd heard, because a lot of people said, a lot of the old generation's like, man, that breakdance, weird stuff. It looks rotten. It's kind of like fighting with dancing. But you know what? It was an art, like martial arts. And they were saying at the time, I don't know if it's true or not, but they advertised breakdancing as it reduced crime. That these people that normally be gangs carrying guns and weapons, they put down their weapons and guns and said, well, let's go out in the street and breakdance over this. So they got like territorial wars with breakdancing. And, they said it actually stopped a lot of murders and crime rate and stuff like that and shootings by the gangs. Of course, you always had your gangs, but I'm curious if that was just more of a play or a hopeful wish to our society, or if it actually did reduce the killing and the gang activity. Instead of fighting with fists and knives and guns, they went and fight with breakdancing. That was the advertisement of it, by the way. That, not the advertisement, that was the theme and what they're pushing. I don't know, but that's what they claim, because I heard it all the time, because my parents are like, you really want to take those breakdancing classes? I'm like, yeah. My dad's like, well, that's not really weird. My mom's, that's kind of strange stuff. And it kind of, I heard they actually, like the adults, they said it's kind of like isn't that kind of like a violent thing? It's more of a fighting kind of thing. I said, yeah, but Dad, you understand, it's a fighting thing that's reduced. They claim it's reduced the fighting on the streets of gangs, right? So who knows, right? Because we never know the truth. It's why they tell us the news. But that was a good positive that they're advertising that, right? That it was probably a good positive in a way. Saying they were, fighting with dance versus, weapons and stuff like that, right? And, well, that's about it. Oh, and that's the thing, robotics, everything was just so cool. I mean, I just can't explain. You know that if you're in the 80s, or just, my gosh, what a decade of just amazement. And if I get a chance, I'll have to show you a link that somebody compiled all the movies that came out in the 80s. And I almost went into tears, because it's so shocking about how many movies and deep themes and just unreal special effects come along. I remember using the first internet I was on. That was what was that? I forgot. You say it was something America. What was that? A Comp America. I can't remember that. It had a service where you have to dial in. My dad used to get mad at me, because back in those days it was like, oh my gosh, it was something like small, like 7 to 9 cents a minute. You gotta realize back then that's 40 cents a minute compared to inflation. And I'd call in and dial in this little dial-up modem, and he goes, and then he'd connect, and it was all text. And said, and the only game it had, like, you could check weather, and it really base stuff. Read a little bit of news, is all text, and you could actually play. What was it? You could play an online game, right? And it was terrible, because you get in. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, and that was actually earlier than 80s. Yeah, that was actually when I was a kid. But anyway, but it had like this Dungeons and Dragons thing where it said you're standing in a cave and there's a bat flying to the right and there's something in the other room. They said you hear some noise, right? All text. So you say go north, and so you go north, and all of a sudden, oh, you've been killed because somebody pushed you, somebody swung at you and killed you, or it was like you stepped into a dragon's den. And I'm like, so then you're dead. So then you had to wait like 5 minutes to go in there, and you realize, even at 7 or 9 cents a minute, whatever it was, my dad's like, boy, because he had like an American Online. That's what it was, American Online. He only had like, he had like I can't remember, like some free grace every once a month of like, I don't know. It was something terrible, like 30 minutes to an hour or 30 minutes max or something ridiculous, 50 and 30, right? So I'd be on like 5 minutes. My dad's like, get off there, Kirk. And I'd try to time it. You know, like, oh my God, I have like, you know, my dad, yeah, my dad that, you know, he was an awesome guy. I'm telling you, my dad was one of the best. He was, didn't talk much, but he's in technology. He owned a Radio Shack when I was growing up. And so I got a lot of exposure to technology and Radio Shack. And, you know, and he used to buy us, you know, I used to put, I remember for Christmas, he gave me a electronic kit, and I was putting capacitors, connecting things together. And boy, I tell you, my dad was really into tech, and I really enjoyed just tinkering with stuff. And he had one of the first robots that he built a robot and was taking around a small town. I don't know if you remember those robots. It was, had one, I can't remember the name of the robot. It's called, but it even had the voice of Stephen Hawking. It's been Mandela effect. It's Hawkins now, or Hawking. It was Stephen Hawking's. But anyway, it had a voice just like him. And it had basically just touch motion, lift up cups and things like that, just one arm. So my dad's going to school and showing kids. And I remember junior high brought it to us one day, and it was just awesome. Just cool. Right? Anyway, so that's it. I'm going to wrap that up. But sorry for nostalgia to babble too much. But, you know, that is really cool. And all right. Take care. God bless, and love you all. Okay? I paused for a minute because this guy, I thought it was a policeman when he shut all these red, white, blue lights. Anyway, all right. Take care. Love you all.